Chris Hayes is tweeting out, it's time Bill Clinton be held responsible or accountable for the stuff that he did, which people always talk about Monica Lewinsky or Jennifer Flowers, but they never talk about Juanita Broaddrick, right? And she accused Bill Clinton of raping her. And she's been totally ignored. But now with the hashtag Me Too and Chris Hayes making a tweet about it, it's gotten interest about her. She actually made this tweet where she said, I was 35 years old when Bill Clinton, Arkansas Attorney General, raped me, and Hillary tried to silence me. I am now 73. It never goes away. And that led... And then this article in New York Magazine by Katie Halper, she sat down with Juanita Broaddrick to get her story and how she feels about everything happening right now. So let me welcome Katie Halper from the Katie Halper Show. Writing has appeared in Salon, Vice, The Nation, Rolling Stone, and now she's here to tell us about this piece and her interview with Juanita Broaddrick. Hi, Katie. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Katie, tell me how did you first become aware of the Juanita Broaddrick story?
So I, for years, had heard that there was someone who had said she was raped by Bill Clinton. The name was a little bit familiar to me, but it wasn't a story I knew in great detail. And I didn't know what she looked like. I didn't know who she was. The reason that I heard about her or actually paid attention to her, because I really dismissed it. I thought, there's so many right-wing nuts out there. There's so many right-wing conspiracy theories out there. And this probably is just another one of them, right? But I barely even paid attention to it. It wasn't even that much on my radar. But what happened was Katie Baker, who's a journalist at BuzzFeed, did a really good, nuanced, fair kind of investigative reporting piece on Juanita Broaddrick. And it was in August 2016 called Juanita Broaddrick Wants to Be Believed. But I didn't hear about that until I heard about a Wonkette piece, which was saying, and it was by that woman, Rebecca Shopcorp.
You got me.
She's the woman who called Jill Stein the C word.
Oh, okay? I'd never even heard about that.
Huge. Wow. Oh, yeah, she's a huge Hillary Clinton fan. In fact, when she was reading What Happened, the book, which I think it was you, Jimmy, right, who said you like a book that answers its own question on the front cover.
Correct.
What Happened, Hillary Clinton. She was reading that and she live tweeted it and she said, my eyes are tired. My eyes are sore from laughing, from learning and crying. But, and learning and crying were spelled with an N apostrophe at the end, which makes it that much worse. Anyway, she wrote this piece. She's a big Clinton defender. And she wrote this piece saying that Bill Clinton may have raped Juanita Broaddrick, but that doesn't mean he's not a good feminist. Now, that
Come on.
It was a bittersweet because on the one hand, I was kind of impressed. She was the only person who was actually saying, it's probably likely that Bill Clinton raped Juanita Broaddrick. But then she totally whitewashed. It wasn't that she denied it. She just whitewashed the significance of that. And she said, I believe in forgiveness. I'm Catholic, which I believe in forgiveness, too. But again, this is a woman who calls Jill Stein the C word. So I don't think she's quite the Jesuit liberation theologian follower of Jesus Christ that she claims to be, right? So that made me look into the story. And I looked into it and I went and I read Katie Baker's piece on it. And Juanita Broaddrick, she never changed her story once she came out in 1999. And the story, I'll get to the story in a second, but the only criticisms that people have of her are ones that they would make, that they would consider to be rape victim blaming. In other words, when liberals and feminists criticize Juanita Broaddrick, they use arguments that if anyone used against a rape victim who wasn't claiming they had been raped by Bill Clinton, these women, liberals and feminists, would call gaslighting, rape victim blaming, asking for the perfect rape victim, and they'd be right. They're just violating their own principles when it comes to Juanita Broaddrick. And so I reached out to her on Twitter and she wrote back right away and we spoke and I interviewed her, and I actually didn't release the interview because I didn't want people to dismiss, because I by then had a real reputation for being a Hillary critic. I didn't want people to dismiss her story as an attempt by me to like ruin things for Hillary Clinton. So my plan was to release it when Hillary Clinton was elected, which you may have noticed didn't happen. And so I spoke to her again, though, because I wanted to update our interview. And it's really weird because Juanita Broaddrick she supported Trump. We'll talk about that in a second. But she and I have a lot of political differences, right? She'll tweet things that I think are very right wing. But I get where she's coming from. And we actually have like we can like talk about things that we both think are ridiculous and problematic in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a woman from Arkansas who's a Trump supporter and like a socialist secular Jew, Bernie bro.
Okay,
from New York.
So let's get to the interview, the meat of it. I just grabbed a quote. So people always ask her. She says, "I became a Trump supporter late in the campaign, and when people ask why do you support a man such as Trump, I say, quote, Donald Trump gave Bill Clinton's victims a voice that we had been denied for 2 decades." So I think that's pretty compelling, right? I mean,
right.
Isn't that? Do you take that as a sufficient answer to that question?
Yeah, I mean, basically, she had a choice between someone who had been accused of rape by some people and someone whose husband had raped her. Like, she knew for certain that Bill Clinton was a rapist because she was raped by him. So, look, in a perfect world, what I thought about this sometimes. I've been like, what if that had happened to me? And I think, well, what I like to think I would have done would be that, you know, if Trump invited me to speak at the second debate, I would have said yes. I would have said that Bill Clinton raped me and Hillary tried to silence me. And I would have said, also, Donald Trump is a misogynist and has been accused of rape. He doesn't care about rape victims. He's just using me. But that's a big ask, right? And I'm a very political person. I was raised very political and politicized. Juanita Broaddrick wasn't. She actually voted for JFK. She voted for Bush. She voted for Obama. And she volunteered for Clinton. She met him because she was volunteering for his gubernatorial campaign. So, and I just think that's a lot to ask, honestly. And Juanita Broaddrick is not an activist or organizer or public intellectual or politician. She's not saying she has the perfect response to this. She's a private individual citizen. And she has the right to talk about the fact that she was raped by Bill Clinton. And you know what? This is the big takeaway, I think. If liberals and feminists don't want someone like Juanita Broaddrick to go to Trump, then they needed to reach out to her and embrace her. And they didn't. You know, they shunned her. Patricia Ireland from Now actually did say something at one point because it was just too much to be silent about it. She said something like, she said something implying, let's not smear Juanita Broaddrick. Because while most people just ignored Juanita Broaddrick, unlike Paula Jones and unlike Monica Lewinsky and unlike Kathleen Willey, although she was kind of ignored too, but Jennifer Flowers, Monica Lewinsky, and Paula Jones. And Paula Jones successfully sued Bill Clinton for sexual harassment. But Juanita Broaddrick, her story barely got any attention. But just to give you a sense of how vicious a lot of alleged progressives and feminists are, or friends of feminists are, you know, James Carville said about Paula Jones, you never know what you'll get when you drag $100 bill to a trailer park or something.
Oh, that's
referring to
right.
Paula Jones,
I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh.
And a woman, an aide for for Bill Clinton said, referred to Bimbogate, said something about Bimbogate.
Bimbogate, right.
And Gloria Steinem, referring to Paula Jones and Monica Lewinsky and Kathleen Willey, who accused Bill Clinton of groping her. She said stuff. She basically like victim blamed and age. She was like, this woman's old enough to be his mother. About, I think, one of them, Kathleen Willey, I think. Like all these, and Betty Friedan said something really terrible about Monica Lewinsky. And like one thing that we have to be clear about is it's not like I'm naive or you're naive and we think that when a Republican goes after Bill Clinton for Monica Lewinsky, it's because they're doing it for the right reasons. Like Newt Gingrich, we all know, was having an affair
right
at this time, right? He's full of it. These people are not feminists. They're not allies. But we can chew gum and walk at the same time. So we can say Republicans are hypocrites, which everyone knows. Like whether you're a Hillary person or a Bernie person, we all agree on that. That's really obvious. we can say that. We can say Trump is horrible on women, and we can say at the same time, and Bill Clinton raped a woman.
Yes. Well, let me just get to a little bit more of the questions people have for her, because that is fascinating. I did go back and look at that, and it was amazing how ubiquitous it was, how the women's movement, the people who were the leaders of it, totally whitewashed what Bill Clinton did and made excuses for it. Like, even if he did do this, it's okay, cuz look all the good stuff he's done for women. That's what they were saying. That right? I'm not making that up, correct?
No, yeah. Well, and in fact, Juanita Broaddrick herself says, I mean, I think it was awkward. Like Gloria Steinem did say that. She was like, look, he's way better on women's issues than, but she also was not acknowledging Juanita Broaddrick. I think that if it had been rape, she would have not been able to say that. So she either didn't know about it or was just pretending not to know about it, because I think people will say stuff about sexual harassment and about groping and that they wouldn't say about physical force, violent rape. I mean, a lot of people also, you know, there's something problematic as libs and feminists, and I am a feminist, I'm a leftist, not lib, but there's something problematic about what Clinton did with Monica Lewinsky also, right? The most powerful man in the world having sexual relations with an intern. But yeah, it's not what he did with Juanita Broaddrick, which was raping her in a hotel room and like biting her lip and pushing down on her shoulder and ripping her pantyhose and you know, coming up that he had a whole elaborate thing and she was it's really a tragic story. It was in the 70s. She was the head of an operator of a nursing home. She was volunteering for him. She was really excited. She says and people should really listen to the interview. I'm not saying that to my own horn, but it's just it's really cool to hear her story. Like her voice telling it as opposed to just reading it. But she was really excited because she was volunteering for Bill Clinton. She thought he was really charismatic. He was going to do great things for the state of Arkansas. They met at her nursing home at an event, and he said, if you're ever in Little Rock, tell me, because she started telling him about reimbursements and how they weren't sufficient and how it was really hard to provide sufficient care for her clients. And he said, tell me if you're in Little Rock. She went to a nursing home conference in Little Rock, and she called him up. He said, where are you going to be? She said she was at this hotel for a conference. They were going to meet in the lobby. And then at the last minute, he said, there are a lot of people here, including reporters. Can we meet in your hotel room? And at this point, he was the attorney general. So she didn't feel, you know, the last person you think is going to break the law to rape you is probably the attorney general, right? So she ordered coffee and was really excited. She had all her this is what it's like extra. The whole thing is heartbreaking, obviously, but she had like all these papers and things ready to show him about her plans and ideas for how to do stuff differently with Arkansas nursing homes. She has it all out. And then he started pointing to the view from the window and about these buildings that he had plans for what he was going to do with them as governor. And then he started kissing her, and she said no, she wasn't interested. And then he just wouldn't stop, and he pinned her to the bed and raped her. And her colleague who was there with her for the conference found her and also testifies that she had a bloody lip.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this gets totally swept under the carpet.
Yeah. And then she doesn't say anything until 90. She is very reluctant to come forward, which is understandable, right? She thought no one would believe her. This is like a lot of women rape survivors have a lot of shame and guilt, right? This was in the 70s in Arkansas, so you can imagine how much stronger it would be.
And it was a very powerful, and it was a powerful man. So she probably would. Well, and so there's a history of them. Well, we just talked about it, of them smearing the Bill's accusers, right? So there is a history of that.
She didn't, right? So at this point, it's in the late 70s. She's afraid. She's embarrassed. Well, of course. Why did I invite a man to my room? We understand why she did it. She did it because he was the attorney general, and she didn't think it was a threat. They had been talking about politics.
Right.
She thought no one was going to believe her. He was the attorney general. He was running for governor. And she didn't want to have reporters would every now and then, there were kind of rumblings, as she says, about the story. And they would reach out to her. And there's actually a recording there's a transcript is available of it. These investigators for Paula Jones showed up at her house in Arkansas on her front porch and tried to get her to say what happened. And she didn't know she was being recorded. And she refuses to talk to them. She's like, I don't want to talk about any of that. It was a long time ago. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want my life to be torn apart the way it happened to Jennifer Flowers. And then because she really didn't want to expose herself, she didn't want to expose her son to this. She had raised a son. She signed an affidavit saying that she had not been raped by Bill Clinton. But what happens is, because she doesn't want to testify in Paula Jones's case, right? Then what happens is, like 4 years later, during the impeachment trials, Kenneth Starr hears about this, and the FBI starts asking her questions. And at this point, she realizes that she can't lie to the FBI because that's a much more serious crime. So she and her son at this point is a lawyer, and she asks him. He tells her she can't do that. So they ask for immunity from Kenneth Starr. Kenneth Starr, who was a special prosecutor looking into Bill Clinton, and Kenneth Starr interviews her, but he decides not to use her. And so lots of defenders of the Clintons and Juanita Broaddrick cynics or deniers or rape apologists use that as proof that she's lying because, look, Kenneth Starr, and he hated Clinton more than anyone else, and he didn't even use her testimony. But the reason he didn't use that, and this actually speaks to why she is so reliable, is because he was looking for obstruction of justice. And he asked Juanita Broaddrick, he said, did Bill Clinton ever tell you not to come forward? Did Bill Clinton ever pay you off to keep you quiet? She said, no, that didn't happen. He raped me, he called me up a couple times, and he came and found me and apologized right before he started running for president. But if she had wanted to get something out of it, if she had ulterior motives, if she was lying, she would have said, oh, they want an obstruction of justice case, so let me lie and say that Bill Clinton told me to shut up. Then it would have been relevant to the case. But because she's honest, she said, no, that never happened.
So, wow, that's quite a story. So then she comes out in 1999, does the interview
on Dateline.
On Dateline.
And they delay it, and they don't play until after the impeachment trials. And they play it opposite the Grammys on a Wednesday night. And she's like devastated because she felt like she had opened her heart and soul and said these things that are really embarrassing. And she said she couldn't watch it at the time. And then she was kind of like, a private citizen, and people would I guess reach out to her. But what brought her out, what made her actually tweet that thing, and I had this in my intro, but it didn't make the cut. So I'm going to do another piece about this, I think. But what made her tweet about that famous tweet that you read at the beginning of the show, which she did in January 2016, where she said, I was 35 when Bill Clinton raped me and Hillary Clinton threatened me, tried to silence me, and never goes away. She did that because in November of 2015, she saw an ad where Hillary says, I have something to say to survivors of sexual assault. No, you deserve to be heard and listened to, and we're with you. And you have the right to be believed. And that, from Juanita Broaddrick, was unbelievable and such hypocrisy. And she tried, this is actually really interesting. I opened my interview with an anecdote about how she's trying to tweet. She's trying for a month to tweet. She doesn't know why it won't send. She calls her grandson, who's 13. She can't tell him. He doesn't know. So she's not like, I'm trying to tweet about the fact that Bill Clinton raped me. So she just has to be like, why isn't this tweet working? Luckily, he's smart enough to know, like, are there numbers showing up in red? She's like, yeah. So she explains it to her. She stares at this tweet for like half an hour and then hits send. And it's like all hell breaks loose and her phone was ringing off the hook.
And that's that tweet. And that's the tweet I showed at the top about where she says, Bill Clinton raped me.
Yeah. And what she also says happened is that after the rape, she went to an event for Clinton. And again, all these people who like to doubt her or smear her say, well, why would you go to an event for Clinton for someone after they raped you? There are lots of reasons that people do this. She was like embarrassed. She felt like she didn't want to tell her friends who she would volunteer with. How was she going to explain that all of a sudden she's not interested in the campaign, right? And she goes to this event, and Hillary Clinton says, wow, I've heard so much about you, or Bill really appreciates everything you've done. And so Juanita thinks that was Hillary threatening her to stay silent. And she herself admits that that's something that, like, she knows people won't necessarily believe that. And I told her once, I said to her, there are people who will believe you about Bill Clinton who won't believe you about the Hillary Clinton part. And she goes, yeah, I know, but that's what happened, and that's how I see it, and I want to tell my truth. So again, she's not like, if she wanted to take down the Clintons, she would just limit her story to Bill Clinton, because a lot of people who won't get on board about the Hillary thing would get on board with that. So for her, it's that much more hypocritical. And of course, she wasn't at all surprised that Hillary Clinton shielded this guy who we now know was accused of Bern Strider. I can't remember.
I think it's Bern Strider is his name, and she was her faith advisor inside her campaign.
Yes.
And he was a sexual harasser, and she knew about it. She was made aware of it, and she didn't fire him. And she just
which was against the advice of her campaign manager, who recommended firing him.
Her own campaign manager told Hillary Clinton to fire that sexual harasser. She didn't, and he went on to. She was supposed to go to counseling. He never went to, and then he went on to get another job working for David Brock, who wrote the book literally on how to slut shame a woman.
Hill.
Anita Hill. So that's a big Clinton ally, that guy. And he hired that sexual harasser. Guess what? He started sexually harassing people over at the new job, working for David Brock at Correct the Record. Oh, so shocker. But let me get to...
And then he was fired then.
And then he was fired then.
But that's a great example of how it's like the Catholic Church. You just shuffle the person around, and you have blood on your hands when you do that, right?
Yes.
You knew about that. They docked some of his pay. They mandated that he would go to counseling. As you said, he didn't want to go to counseling. And you know what? That's on you the next time it happens. Not just, it's on everyone who ignores that or condones it.
So let me get to this a little bit more from your interview with her. Yeah. And I'll put a link underneath to the article and to you did a podcast with her, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll put a link to that too. And then she says, and then they say, well, why did you go to the debate? So if you don't remember, Trump brought in a lot of people who Bill Clinton had allegedly sexually harassed, and Juanita Broaddrick, who she says he raped her, and they would sit in the front row of those debates. So they ask her, well, why did you go to that debate? And she says, well, I had been told for 2 decades to go back into the woodwork. I didn't matter. So here was my opportunity to be heard in a huge public forum. I just couldn't have imagined that happening to me after all these years. So that's why she went. And so that's why she went to the debates, and that's why she said she supported Trump at the end. And so I think those are very good answers. What did you like those answers, Katie? What did you think of them?
Yeah. I mean, I think that again, why wouldn't this? I mean, Trump is he's very smart about this stuff, and but I remember when I was watching that debate, and I said, why isn't Hillary Clinton hitting him harder on the grabbing women thing? And my mom goes, because she has her albatross of a rapist husband in the room there with her about Bill Clinton. And it's true, like Trump was very, very, very good and agile about the way he responded to that. And he just went to the Bill Clinton story. And I think that, she probably would have gone after Trump more around the sexual assault stuff than she was able to, given that Trump turned around and said, well, your husband's been accused of this stuff too. And I just said I did. I just was locker room talk, but your husband actually did. He
actually did this. So we talked about this a little earlier about the women who were the leaders of the feminist movement. They all turned their back on Juanita Broaddrick, and they gave a pass to Bill Clinton, even for Monica Lewinsky and Paula Jones and all the other stuff that he was accused of doing and did. And so you ask her about this. Yeah. And, I hope that what they did for women's rights brought us women to a better existence. I just hate that they threw me and the other victims of Bill Clinton under the bus to do it. I used to think that you can sacrifice a few for the many, but I've come to another realization. I wonder how many of the women and children and men would not have been raped or sexually assaulted over the last 2 decades if these women's groups had just done the right thing and denounced Bill Clinton. Instead, it brought us to this society of accepting Bill Clinton's transgressions. That's wrong. How many less victims would there have been had he been removed from office for what he did? And I think that's pretty powerful, and it's hard to argue against that, right? Yeah,
it's really offensive that people claim this woman is a right-wing nut job and wing nut and wing bat, whatever. Like, that's a very nuanced and rational and thoughtful thing that she said. And she's even empathizing. She's giving feminists the empathy that they're not giving her. Some of them. I mean, I'm a feminist. But she's giving empathy and compassion and understanding to some of the feminists who turned their back on her that they didn't give to her. And they're the ones who claim to be feminists. I actually told her in the interview, I was like, I think you're kind of an accidental feminist, Juanita.
I agree.
Because she was Me Too before there was Me Too. And she's basically saying everyone has to be believed and not just when it's politically convenient. The thing is, like, as Matt Iglesias and others pointed out when they said Bill Clinton should have resigned over Monica Lewinsky, it's not like he resigned and Newt Gingrich would have taken over. He would have resigned and Al Gore would have taken over.
Right.
So, a Democrat would have stayed in power.
Right,
and the other thing, of course, I was thinking of is like, you had a chance, not to make this about Bernie, but you had a chance during the primary to endorse and support the person who wasn't married to the person who you think should have resigned over his actions. Like, that's great that you're saying this now, but shouldn't that have been some baggage that you thought maybe was like gonna be problematic? And that could have been one of the reasons you actually.
Well, that's the total ironic thing is that a lot of people said they were voting for Hillary even though they agreed with Bernie because he was too flawed of a candidate and she was stronger in the general, which is the exact opposite. That was pretend, just like every other thing they've had to manufacture to sell Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, the least popular Democratic nominee in the history of the party. She already lost once before because half the country won't vote for her, and everyone knew it then. But listen, Katie, we have to go. I appreciate you. I'm going to put a link to your story and your podcast underneath that. That's a great story. Thanks for doing that interview.
Thank you.
Katie Halper, ladies and gentlemen.
And she has a book out. Sorry, Juanita has a book out called You Better Put Some Ice on That, which is what Bill Clinton said to her when he left the hotel room.
No.
About her lip.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And unless you want to see any more proof, last thing, that Hillary Clinton is totally enabled by her supporters, see the bizarre tweet that she tweeted out in response to the story breaking about her not firing the advisor in 2008. It's the worst non-apology. It makes her seem like she did the right thing. And
she said she was glad that woman spoke out and she encouraged her. And when it happened,
and had her say or was heard. Yeah, she was heard, and then Hillary Clinton heard it and said he's not worth firing.
Yes,
over you.
That's what her tweet. All right, Katie Halper, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jimmy.